Welcome everyone. Welcome to vTechImmunITy webinar series. This is the fifth episode of our webinar series, so welcome back. This particular series is IT challenges faced by organizations in 2020 due to COVID-19. I am honored today, we are honored today to have Dr. Setrag Kashafian and Mr. Martin Redman with us today. Dr. Setrag is the principal and chief scientist at Koch Consulting. He's a senior executive with over 25 years in the software industry. Mr. Martin Redman is the CEO of Analytic Risk Intelligence Management. He is a technical expert in the new CMMC compliance standards. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, we can do the next slide, please. Great. So vTech Solutions, just real quick, again, we're a global IT consulting firm. We have four main focuses. That's managed IT services, network security, professional services, and cloud computing and migration. We've got 23 field offices located across the United States and 4 in Canada. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a series of questions, starting with Dr. Setrag, we'll dive deeper into these questions to give the audience an understanding of what we're facing in COVID-19 and how to mitigate some of these situations. So Doctor, first question to you, sir. How is virtualization impacting IT and in the workspace post COVID-19?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're so much used to look what we're doing here, right? With these various tools, Zoom, Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting. One of the, by the way, my favorites is Portal from Facebook. I've used it both for personal as well as for business. It's really a different world, but I like to come at it from two perspectives. One is for the employees, right, who are virtual, they are doing remote working. And the other, which sometimes we forget, are perhaps the most important. In the public sector, it's called constituent or the citizen. And in the private sector, it's called the customer, although I've seen the public sector use the term customer as well. Just to give you one statistics, a recent survey has indicated that 72% of consumers had their first ever virtual care visit during COVID-19. Now, it's very interesting. This virtualization is impacting both the employee, work from home, as well as the consumer or the customer. So IT needs to make the virtualization and has to decide whether they want to standardize or allow flexibility. There are other things that IT needs to do. One is collaboration tools becoming extremely important now more than any other time. I'm not going to get into tools, by the way. Whoever is listening can contact you or contact me, and I'll give you some examples of collaboration tools, sharing whiteboards, etc. Not that IT did not have or did not support such tools, both for the worker or the consumer, but now it's becoming much more important because the world is changing. There have been, interestingly, some studies done on, okay, let's say this is behind us. Well, as they say, the genie is out of the bottle. Now there are habits. They enjoy it. Like 51% of workers say we're going to go back to the office, but then a lot of them like the freedom and the flexibility they had working from home. So the availability of the robustness and the security of virtualization will continue post-COVID-19. The last thing I want to touch upon is the move to the cloud. See, this is a great opportunity. Now that we have virtualization, there have been studies also on the planning of cloud usage, the transformation of cloud usage. It's become much more important. The surveys range from highly important to plan to move to the cloud to slightly important, but it's about 50%. So not that, again, organizations did not have plans to move to the cloud. It has become, it's sort of COVID-19 stressed us, right? And it accentuated a number of trends IT was undergoing. Now it becomes much more important. So as I said, some of it is cultural, like now they like it, although there are studies of stress as well, there's some funny videos out there where the kid moves in, during a business conference. I saw one which was very funny. It was a business meeting where Conan showed up, during the business meeting. So it's a cultural change. There is some stress working from home, but even post COVID-19, a lot of the workers said we like this flexibility. So this sort of independence that we got, and so IT needs to be prepared with collaboration tools, with the applications moving to the cloud, accelerate the strategy of this digital transformation.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Doctor. And it'll be interesting too, moving forward, to see what other industries, embrace IT in this regard, right? I mean, I think a lot of companies were almost stunned by the efficiency that they found could still happen with an online presence like this and a collaboration, right? So I think the old brick and mortar model will never be what it was. And to your point too, the cloud is going to become even more into play and more important. And with that is security, right? So my next question is for you, Martin. What are your thoughts on the CMC certification that's coming out? And if you could, just in the beginning of this conversation, break it down in kind of its most simplistic form for the viewers out there.
Sure. Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. And I just want to, be with vTech and Analytic Risk Intelligence has partnered with vTech to help provide services in the area of getting organizations through the CMMC, which is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification process. And every company that does any contracting with the government that is applicable to the DFARS has to get a CMMC certification, at least at one level. And you can be a machine shop making F-15 parts to a lawn care service. But if you're applicable contractor with DFARS, you're going to have to get this certification, which is big news for the industry. And it's all about enforcing the security requirements that are in the contracts. And I've got 25 years and have gone from red books into FISMA to FedRAMP, and these clauses have been in there in DFAR 7012, but they've never been enforceable and audited. And everybody's been saying, yeah, we do it, right? But like other certifications with HIPAA and HITRUST, right, where you have to meet a certain level and you get audited on it, and you get that certification. Or if you're moving to the cloud that was mentioned, you get a SOC certification. It's an audit by an external third party that has a series of controls that validates that your systems meet a compliance level. None of that has been done for DoD systems. And what the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification is that level. It has taken all the DFAR requirements, all the NIST requirements, the GSA requirements, the DoD requirements, and they're standing up a whole certification organization. So you have what is called the CMMC-AB, the Accreditation Board, right? And the task of the Accreditation Board is to look across all of the requirements and build the standard controls that the assessors. Now, they also have to do a couple things. They actually have to educate and put out what the assessors need to do and make sure they're competent to do that, which is what I do, right? I come in and I do an assessment. I actually have to get a certification that I'm CMMC certified to come in and do an assessment. And then you have they also have to stand up organizational units. So they have the certifiers, which we'll talk a little bit about the roles, but then you become a 3APO certification organization that does this, and that's what my company does in partnering with vTech. We're gonna go out. We're gonna help you perform that, and I can be that certification organization for that. So the CMMC or AB's mission is to, one, go through all these controls and make sure they're all aligned with the DFARS, the DoD regs, and then it's to stand up this ecosystem where you have assessors, you have trainers, you have training documentation, you have accreditors, and you have a quality control back that let's say I'm a third-party assessor and there's some sticky controls and they want to challenge them a little bit. You have the AP board will weigh in on that, and they'll say, okay, yeah, I see what you're doing, but again, it's a validation of a standard in the DFARS in a nutshell. Right, they're being that body. There has not been a DoD certified certification before, like HITRUST, or like in the banking industry, SOX, or PCI is another one. Right, those are all standards with accreditation boards, and that's what the CMCC AB's mission is to stand up that ecosystem of assessors that can now assess all these companies and make sure that information. And to the point of COVID and how that really plays in is, it really is the function is to secure the supply chain. That's the end goal. So you don't, when a part comes down from Lockheed Martin, it's labeled classified and ends up in a machine shop, right, that it's got the right documentation on it. And that machine shop, which is a third, fourth, fifth party supplier, is securing that information. Right, and as we go to the remote world, how are we doing this in our remote environments, right? So these controls will be applied and validated, and the assessors will validate that for the team. If that answers the question.
Yes, no, that was wonderful, and I will ask you to dive into detail here in a few minutes in some of those ecosystems components and some of those roles. But thank you, Mr. Redmond, so much. Doctor, this next question's for you. What are some automation trends that will be more pervasive post-COVID-19? This is a two-part question. The first is, what are some automation trends that will be more pervasive post-COVID-19? The second part to that question would be, what are the implications of those automation trends?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were already with a lot of digital transformation initiatives, both in the public sector as well as private, on various automation roadmaps. But what does that mean? So I like to look at the spectrum of work and spectrum of workers when we come to automation. I'm going to focus a little bit more on white-collar work, although automation, especially through robotics, has been having huge impact on a discrete and process manufacture. That's usually under the banner of Industry 4. But let's come to the white-collar work, especially, for example, in the public sector. If you look at the spectrum of work, so you have often repetitive work. So I come in to my office and I log into three systems. Or there is a change of address by constituent or a customer, there are 5 systems need to be changed. 5 systems. So repetitive work, I'm entering data repetitively. Anything that is repetitive, so one end of the spectrum, is being automated. There is an emergence. One of the fastest growing software areas is robotic process automation. Now that's a little bit confusing if people have not heard of it. These are not physical robots, these are software robots. That it's almost like magic. I mean, you set it up, so IT sets it up, right? The implication is it's for IT to set it up. Believe me, and we heard some stories, in the public sector especially, but also private sector, there are still green screens, right? There are still mainframes. I heard about one department was using COBOL. I mean, you're interacting with systems where you not necessarily have a service-oriented architecture or an API, application programming interface. So robotic, even on the desktop, can automate the tasks that are repetitive. It can also do it in the back office. like update different informations that you have in systems of record. So that's one end of the spectrum. In the middle, what you're getting now, becoming extremely important, are what is called AI-assisted work. It's almost like having an Alexa or a Siri helping you do your work, coaching you. And what happens, and COVID-19 is accelerating this, is the more we discover there's repetitive work, it's going to shift to the robotic automation. Some of it is going to shift to the right. What is the right? Well, humans still matter, believe it or not, right? We still need experts. Like Martin was explaining about this compliance regulation. You need experts, like you need doctors, you need engineers, you need nurses. They have a lot of the experience in their head. Increasingly, we are harvesting those and digitizing them through policies or business rules. We're also mining data and discovering patterns, but you still need humans. So you need to involve them as well. So you have this whole spectrum of repetitive work. This is being automated to robotic automation. If I were to do a bell curve, 80 or 90% are in this AI-assisted work, but there will be a shift happening. Both to the right, where you're gonna involve more and more cognitive workers, experts. They're becoming very, very important, and we continue to harvest them. I don't think they will ever be replaced, although there are some crazy thoughts out there with singularity, etc., that they will be replaced. I don't believe it. They'll always be there. They're always in a company, like regulation, like Martin was discussing. It's very complicated. Right, and you have to even interpret this regulation. You should know where they are and how you're gonna implement. So you will need those cognitive workers, and they need to be part of the process. But you're gonna see a shift happening from a much richer, AI-assisted work. So IT needs to make that real. IT needs to harvest the intelligence, and sometimes it's in rule books, that exists in people's mind, and know how to involve them, and also introduce this the statistics is amazing. This area of software is growing at the rate of 30-40%. It's going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry according to Gartner in a few years. In fact, talking about Gartner, they introduced this term called hyper-automation. You can look it up. It's like advanced technologies, AI, ML, increasingly automate the processes and augment humans. Many people have not heard of it, but there is this whole notion of hyper automation. And the last thing I want to say is that we are generating enormous amount of data, both through, we didn't touch upon it, connected devices. The consumer is generating a lot of data. Now we've introduced video conferencing, it's commonplace, but are we getting smarter? Are we harvesting knowledge from this data? That's going to be very important for automation. We don't want to automate bad processes. We want to understand where we are with our current processes, identify bottlenecks, identify areas in these processes that need to be completely automated, or introduce AI-assisted automation, or involve the knowledge worker. There is another sector which is growing also very fast, and many people have not heard of it, is process mining. Now, not just data mining, but looking at the logs of the activities within the organization and extracting a process map of how things are getting. If a customer has a dispute or opening an account, etc., what are we doing? When we do, we get a call, for example, we're a customer service representative, and we transfer and we access certain applications. Things are delayed, often takes days. Things fall through the cracks. Still, people are using paper. The other day, I had an experience. One agency asked me to fax. I hadn't heard fax for a decade. I didn't realize faxes exist. So I had to somehow fax a document. So it still exists. Some of the, especially agencies, have pockets of legacies. So we need to mine the processes, see where are the opportunities, and then introduce a digital transformation and a modernization initiative to give us flexibility in this spectrum of work automation, repetitive, AI assisted, and cognitive work.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Doctor. I mean, one of the things that we hear from our customers all the time is how do we do more with less, right? And then I think it comes down to how do we complement existing teams and not necessarily replace the existing teams. And I think we're going to, to your point, we're going to see more and more of that. And it's going to it will become more and more sophisticated, and it's happening very quickly. Thank you so much for that, Doctor. Mr. Redman, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper on kind of the tail end of what you were talking about last time as far as the CMCC, the AB. Can you talk a little bit more about those ecosystem components and the critical roles that they're going to play?
Yeah, no, great question. Great question, Mike. So basically, there's two sides of it. It's, hey, getting these consultants and these organizations together that can do the assessments. And then it's also building an ecosystem to actually train, produce documentation is what the AB board, the CMMC board has to do. So from the preparer side of it, so a company, such as my company, vTech, becomes a certified third-party assessment organization, or it's called a C3 PAO, right? They're going to go out and do assessments, right? Now, what they have to have on staff are certain people to do the assessments that are licensed. And again, the CMMC board, they'll set these certifications, and they've created a series of them. They've created a CP role, which is just a professional that can help along with the team. And then they've actually got a certified, so that's a certified AB professional. You can get that certification, certain training. The next level up is you're the actual assessor, right? And that's where I'm at, where I do a CMMC. I'm the actual assessor responsible coming in, setting up the questions, and how do you do that during COVID? Because a lot of it's process, and you've got to do interviews too. It's just not all machine, hey, can I see your logs? And which you can get a lot from them, but you still need to understand what their processes are. And the assessor figures out what controls are going to be assessed and what questions need to be assessed. So those are really the two roles that the organization, the C3PAO, will have. They'll have a series of professionals that are certified, and they'll have assessor. Now, another line of business that the AB is putting out is, hey, we need people to actually train these people to be assessors. So they have a role called instructor, kind of like train the trainer, that you're certified to actually instruct assessors and professionals and teach them how to do this, right? So that's a line of business that the board has to put up. And if you're a training organization, this is a criteria or curriculum that you really want to look at. You want to say, well, I can hire people to do this instructor because it's got the bandwidth is very limited. Every organization is going to have to go through this. So they've got to spread the wealth and get as many people certified as possible to go out and do these. And then they have a master assessor instructor, right? And then internal to the board, they have a quality auditor. So those are the roles that the board is setting up, and a couple more parts of the organization. So the other part of it, we talked about the consulting group, but also the training piece of it, to look a little bit about that. You have training and education. They also need people that are going to have, licensed partner in publishing to publish the documentation, and also to train. And then the third component is the company, what's called a organization seeking assessment, an OSCI. So OSC is how it's termed. So those are the components of the ecosystem that they're looking to put together for that. If that answered the question there, Mike.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I've got a couple things in mind too that I'm going to ask you about in terms of timeline here coming up as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Redman. Doctor, next question for you, and that is, how is the emergence of low-code, no-code type platforms going to impact IT post-COVID-19?
That's a great question. It's amazing. A silent revolution is happening in development. The low code, no code scenario, and I don't want to get into the differences. We can have a whole webinar on what they are and what are the differences, is really becoming extremely popular. There are predictions that within 3 to 5 years, 65% of software development is going to be done through low code, no code. Still, right? If you look every year, there is a publication of what are the most popular programming languages. And still all the usual suspects are there, Java, C#, etc. There are a couple of new ones. And there are tens of millions of developers. But low code, no code completely changes the game. It's transformation. Why? Because it opens up the opportunity for citizen developers. Let me talk a little bit about some of the pain points. One of the pain points is, I'm sure you've heard the term, the IT backlog, right?
Sure.
Never be able to keep up with the demands of the business. COVID-19, everything we're talking about already exists before COVID-19. COVID-19 is stressing it. You know, it's emphasizing it. It's making it much more important to adapt, to change, to build new solutions, right? Tracking solutions or whatever, to be able to involve the remote workplace, even do budget cuts, and I think you used a term which is extremely important, do more with less, right? Even, internal transformation, fail fast and succeed faster is gonna be the mantra. We need to constantly adjust. Who knows what's gonna happen? Low code, no code is an important transformational component of it. Let me tell you one of the things it does. It allows you to build applications. It's not necessarily easy, by the way. I don't want to confuse anyone. It's not easy. You need to learn. It's a different way of solving problems. But you can build enterprise applications. Some of them data-centric, some of them process-centric, some of them are configuration of existing like CRMs or ERPs, systems of record. I even saw a very recent one which was doing low code, no code for AR, VR, right? Virtual reality.
Yeah.
It's everywhere for integration. So imagine IT doing low code, no code. So IT gets more empowered, can do more with less. But more importantly, low code, no code opens the opportunity for IT and business to speak the same language. There is a new transformational term that is coming up and it's becoming very important, and that is the citizen developer. What in the world is the citizen developer? Who is the citizen? The citizen is you and I. When we're executives, right? We use PowerPoint, Excel spreadsheet. We have no problem with that. What if, especially the newer, younger generation who is not afraid of technology, we empower the business who knows the processes, like all the things Martin he has it in his head, he knows the documentation. They are able to speak with IT the same language and be involved in the development of new, fast, innovative applications. They become citizen developers. So the citizen developer is the business, it's anybody. And there are challenges to this. First of all, IT has to decide what type. The spectrum of low code, no code is amazing. As I said, there is business process-centric, low code, no code, data-centric, low code, no code. There is integration, etc. So they have to select what is, for even web design, web application, mobile application, cloud. These are all areas that have low code, no code solution. It's exploding in terms of solution. We're in the middle of shift, so IT needs a strategic roadmap to move the organization. And this will be a challenge because they're very comfortable and familiar with their Javas and little tools and their C#, etc. They're used to it. This is a different way of thinking and approaching problems and solutions and involving the business as a partner like never before. I've seen it. This is revolutionary and it's extremely important.
Wow. Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I mean, that makes me think of, waterfall development to agile to to DevOps, and then I guess really what you're talking about would be next level type thinking and collaboration to make those things happen. Second part of the question, and you may have touched into it some of it, but what are 3 to 4 key technologies that are going to impact post-COVID-19 operations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I usually put it have a top-down approach. The first thing that needs to change post-COVID-19, and I have a 2-part article, by the way, on this on Forbes. We can put it in a link. I can send it. It's what is called a digital transformation debt. Digital transformation debt is a concept I introduced, really being inspired from technology debt. What is technology debt? Technology debt is the following. IT chooses simple patches and solutions and ignores the painful transformation and technologies that they come and need to be taken into consideration. The refactoring, introducing new technologies, they ignore it, the debt accumulates. And for, not so much the public sector, but the private sector, it could be existential. So we've seen many companies that have ignored the technology debt and they have disappeared, right? We used to have, for example, in Massachusetts, Polaroid. We don't hear about even Kodak. There's so many examples. They just disappear. Now, so what are 3 or 4 technologies? So digital transformation debt starts with culture. I think we're going to come to that later. But I want to answer your question and look at the technologies. One of them is we are becoming extremely connected, right? So this virtualization is one example. But Internet of Things, and there are a variety of Internet of Things. Like in medicine, the term is IoMT, Internet of Medical Things. Very important in post-COVID-19 because we need to monitor, we need to do telemedicine and monitor the patient through Internet of Medical Things becomes very important. That needs to be part of the IT technology stack. It is not today. It's very siloed. I mean, of course, there are exceptions, but very siloed. There needs to be a reference architecture. And again, for your readers, etc., I can give some resources. A reference architecture that tells you what are the various technologies, what is the technology stack, when at the foundation you have many, many connected devices. And this is in many industries, right? For example, in public sector, there is an explosion of smart city technologies. It's just transforming, and not every smart city is at the same level of maturity. If something happens, for example, an adverse event happens, like there's some hazardous material or whatever, or a riot happens, etc., the city needs to use its connected devices dynamically, address traffic problems, send the right personnel, whether it's emergency vehicles, police, etc., and resolve the end-to-end process. That's not easy to do. Right. So IT has a very big role, and that's not only just the connected device. Another technology, I mean, we spoke about some of this. I'm going to leave just one more, which is one of my passions, is the decentralized world that is happening. So we're moving towards a connected world, like smart cities, connected medicine. These are not pie in the sky in the future. These are happening today. IT needs to have the reference architecture, the best practices, the innovations, the business focus to support this. The other is even less mature, is the decentralized world. You have heard it as blockchain. Okay, blockchain is relatively boring technology, is distributed ledger, but it has a transformational impact. There are so many, and I've done some recent research on it, like in pharmaceutical, the supply. Look what happened to the supply chain during COVID-19. It's a mess, right? Supply chain got impacted tremendously. Insanity is trying the same things again and again and expecting a different result. We have to change and transform our supply chain. We need to change the suppliers, We need to look at technologies like 3D printing sometimes, which I have examples of, by the way, where some manufacturing companies changed and adjusted. But we need to monitor and know and do inter-enterprise, not just the intra. IT usually focuses on the intra and maybe makes the solutions available via the cloud. That's good. That's the starting point. Now they have to look at inter-enterprise, sharing information, common information about products, about pharmaceutical products, about vehicles, etc., across the organizational boundaries, which sometimes cross country boundaries, even continent boundaries. They need to have complete visibility. Most IT is not ready to do that, or that it's decentralized.
Right. No, thank you, Doctor. And again, we could probably have an hour conversation just around that alone. Gentlemen, just a quick update. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to quickly go through these last couple of questions. That way, we can leave the floor open for Q&A in case anybody wants to ask. So I'm just going to ask you to condense the answers a little bit more. That way, we can get to the end together. So, Mr. Redmond, this next question is for you. As we talk a lot about a lot of these exciting technologies that a company wants to move over into the DoD, the DoD space, what is the timeline for the CMMC implementation?
Great question. So right now, they're in their second phase of actually getting the C3PAs, the companies, to sign up for it. They've defined the ecosystem. Everybody's submitted a licensing fee. An organization gets a licensing fee, and people register for tests. It's a 60-day application, right? So they'll be testing. You'll get certified over the summer and fall. And again, from the contracting standpoint, no one will be able to get any type of certification until the spring of 2021. So if a contracting officer listens to this and puts those into the requirement, you must, be CMMC certified for this contract award. The earliest that there's going to be able to be award, right, would be the spring of 2001. So the way that's rolling out is the assessors and training is going to be in the fall, and in the winter there's going to be some certification training, and then the ecosystem goes live winter spring of 2021 is where that goes. And so and again, what the scope of their model, and you can be assessed, there's 5 different levels of assessment, right? Now, if you have government information, level 1 and level 2, if you have any type of classified information, the minimum level is level 3 in the model, right, that you have to get through. So you have to do an assessment of level 8. So as you go up in levels, you add controls to more restrictions and requirements that you're assessed against, right? So the original assessments, the low-hanging fruit, would be able to get to level 1. So in the winter, spring of 2021, organizations, what's called the organization seeking certification, can start up saying, hey, these assessors are coming online. You need to book a contract with them. Can you come in and get us to at least level 1, right? Or I have a classified contract. You got to get me to level 3 is where you need to go. And again, that's a preparation. You're looking at 3 months to get the right questions in place, and then to get through that assessment. So you're into 2021 to get your business through that certification process. And we can talk a little bit about the DoD regulations that they're going to be assessed against, but the summary is, if you're not dealing with classified information, you're just level 1, level 2, that's a shorter assessment. As you go to level 3, it's going to take a little longer, and the earliest you're going to be able to do that is going to be the winter, spring of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Redmond, so much. And, again, I will probably be asking both of you gentlemen back to dive deeper on both sides of this house because of our limited time frame this morning. But I'm going to push forward just a little bit. Doctor, I'm going to ask you this final question. We've seen innovations and new disruptive companies emerge during recessions, right? What will be the innovation trends post-COVID-19? And what will be the role of IT in those innovations? How do you see that moving forward?
Great question, and I'll keep it brief. And there are really the way I look at it is 4 interdependent innovation areas, and IT is extremely critical for all of them. First of all, it's the innovation in the customer or constituent engagement experience. Treating different patients, for example, differently, depending on their situation. That there needs to be innovation. Not everybody is the same. Knowing what is the next thing you need to do for that patient, what is the context of that customer. I mean, it doesn't need to be a patient, could be anybody. That customer that constitute. That's one area. The second is this whole area of automation. We already touched upon it. Revisiting the processes. IT is very important to look at each one of them and see where are the low-hanging fruits in terms of modernization of the processes. Very critical. The third is coming up with new and innovative solutions and products. Enterprises need to disrupt themselves. I'm sure you have heard of disruption, Christensen's work, and how big companies have been disrupted. Airbnb, Uber, etc. disrupted the rental and taxi industry. So every company needs to be an entrepreneur. That is an extreme, and IT is the catalyst, the tools. Even IT, the fourth area needs to disrupt itself. Like low-code, no-code, that's the other innovation, and come up with an overall framework. For lack of a better name, I use it, competency center, where you think big, think transformational, but start small and show result and continuously iterate on it. So IT needs to own that in partnership with the business.
Wow, that is a lot to chew on, and I'm sure that is a fourth component that a lot of folks don't talk about, or don't think about rather. But gentlemen, I need to wrap this up quickly. I just want to tell you both how honored and blessed we are to have you guys on this panel today. You guys have been so informative, and we would love and again be honored to have you guys back. We wanted to do a quick poll for the audience. If we could pull that poll up real quick. Okay. What are the biggest IT challenges faced by your organization during the current pandemic scenario? It's a multiple choice question or answer rather. It's scalability, shifting business processes, the work from home model, or if there's another and you have your own comments, please let us know. We're interested in to see what your thoughts are on that. And we will provide the links that Dr. Setrag had talked about as well. And then let me open the floor real quick to Q&A. Do we have any Q&A at the moment? Oh, Mr. Redmond, you want to say something, sir?
Yeah, no, I just want to throw out some quick references because I know there's a lot talked about there on YouTube until a question pops up. If you go out and on YouTube and want to learn more about CMCC, search CMCC-AB. You can get questions out directly to the CMCC board, and that's at conversations@cmmccab.org. And then their website is www.cmmccab.org. And my direct email is Martin, MARTIN, @axrims, AXRIMS.com. If there's any questions or any engagement the team needs for an assessment, and my direct cell is 540-220-1145. Thanks for having me.
You're a brave man.
You're a brave man.
But if there are some secondary level questions, gentlemen, we'll certainly get those out to you guys, siloed to the right area, and then give those answered back to the audience. But again, just wanted to thank you from the vTech family, the bottom of our hearts. You guys have been super informative. Thank you so much. And that concludes our webinar today.